Hey everyone, it's DeagleBeagle. So today we're going to be going over a few things. So here are some ideas that you can try out. I invented these myself. I didn't see this from anybody, and I've never seen anyone use something like this. So you may be wondering, by the way, is Wo-Chien good? How can we make it good? Or I guess Wo-Chien, whatever. Because somebody did win a tournament with it recently. I forget his name, but he wasn't using breast talk. I'm pretty sure, he was using something else. I think he was using Terra Poison, or like the standard type of Leech Seed set. I know he had Snarl though. I think it was Snarl, Pollen Puff, like Leech Seed Protect. But see, the main issue people have with Wo-Chien is it has all these weaknesses, and if you Terra, you lose your grass typing, and then you get spored. So I was thinking of Terra Grass with it, but then the problem with that is you're still weak to a lot of stuff, and you don't really resist what's trying to super affect you. Um, People have an issue with Wo-Chien because it's a Terra Hog, they call it, because it kind of needs to Terra a lot, but it's actually probably at its best right now in the current meta because everyone's trying to counter intimidate with like Oblivious Dondozo or King Ambit or whatever. So all that stuff keeps increasing. So then you need a more reliable way of reducing their physical offense besides just intimidate. So after I saw that Garganacl, Wo-Chien, Arcanine type of team win, and I had a Tyranitar on it too. I'm like, this looks kind of similar to my half-hard Trick Room teams that I keep using and doing well with all these tournaments and keep doing better and better with it because I know how to use it now. And I also invented Hariyama with Terra Steel Heavy Slam, by the way, even though that's something other people could have thought of. I mean, people could think of anything, but I haven't seen anyone else use Heavy Slam Hariyama yet. But I suppose if they did use it, there's a good chance they might use it, even though I don't think I think someone that won a tournament recently on Limitless, he wasn't using Heavy Slam and he wasn't using Terra Steel either. So Terra Steel Heavy Slam actually has been pretty good because it does good damage versus a lot of things. Flutter Mane, you don't even necessarily need the Terra Steel, most likely, even if you're intimidated. And it just does a lot of damage versus like Amoonguss and other stuff too. So it's really not bad. And it has a lot of offense and Trick Room, so that's how I've been doing so well in these tournaments is you can get off enough damage before you die, and unlike Iron Hands, it has Flame Orb Guts, so it has more power, basically, even though it has less bulk. So it being weak to Spore, I mean, not weak to Spore, not being put asleep is also another good thing, and not weak to like poison from toxic spikes or debris or whatever. So this team is already really resistant to sleep. Very resistant to sleep, actually. Actually, every single Pokemon on this team is possibly immune to sleep. At first, I was using safety goggles Arcanine, but I want to test Terra Grass with it in case, in case I really do need that spore immunity, and it can be used to survive like Palafin or Great Tusk as well. So Terra Grass might be the way to go with Arcanine. I was using at first Terra Water with safety goggles, even though I'm not usually big into Terra Water on Arcanine because I'm thinking it should probably wall what it's weak to, and Terra Water is mostly just good versus Palafin and taking neutral from stuff. So Terra Grass might be a better way to go in case you need it, but I don't think I would Terra that much with Arcanine anyways. It's just nice to have like Mago Berry or something to keep it alive instead of Goggles, which is like only good versus Spore and ignoring Rage Powder. But that won't happen like half or most, probably most games actually. You won't even use safety goggles at all. So it was just seeming like a waste. And I am new to this team, but I think Terra Grass might be better. And this team is weak to Maus Ape, but it beats almost everything else. So it's very good defensively, and it has a good speed control, heavy offensive presence. Because if you look at the top, um, if you look at the top 17 Pokemon a few days ago, or within the last week or so, when I had a tournament, I checked the metagame tab, and these were the top 17 Pokemon. I even checked Pikalytics; they were pretty kind of similar, even though Pikalytics is way outdated. So I was like, I'm not going to base on Pikalytics. I'm going to base on what people actually use, and this is pretty similar to the latter too, even though the latter they use different stuff. But of course, this is pretty accurate. So if you really think about it, Tyranitar super affects like half of these Pokemon with just Rock Slide alone. Like Iron Bundle, Chi-Yu, Arcanine, Chien-Pao, Dragonite, Gyarados, Torkoal, Baxcalibur, and the ones that it doesn't super affect with Rock Slide, it can super affect with like Crunch or some other move like Low Kick or Terra Grass Blast or whatever. But even just super affecting, like I think it was 8 out of the 17, that's huge. Let me see again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, just with Rock Slide alone, it super affects 8 of them. With a Choice Band, you could one-shot most of them. Even Pokemon that are not weak to Rock Slide, it'll one-shot Flutter Mane pretty much all the time unless it's running bulk. And you do have the Sand Chip to help finish it off too. So, like, it can even one-shot Arcanine if you're not intimidated, and if you're intimidated, it still does a lot, and it can flinch stuff. I mean, it can miss, but the flinches kind of make up for it a lot of times. It just depends. You just have to not use Rock Slide when you can't have it miss, and try to use like Crunch unless you have to unless you're in that situation where you have to use it and it has to hit. So Tyranitar is very good in Trick Room with the Choice Band on it. I've used it in a few tournaments and it's done amazing. I did invent that in a sense because I've never seen someone use Choice Band Tar except me, and it did really well actually. And Hatterene, you could use it with Protect over Mystical Fire, but it's nice to have just more offensive coverage if you need it, because you probably would run Terra Fire anyways, because you need something that takes neutral or less damage from Shadow Ball, but also at the same time resists Moonblast, because Moonblast would kill you otherwise. So that's why I kind of decided on Terra Fire, because if you use Terra Water or whatever, or you could use Terra Steel, but if you want to use Mystical Fire, then Terra Fire makes more sense by far. So, I mean, Terra Fire and Steel are about the same anyways, but Terra Steel might be barely more logical if you're not using Mystical Fire. But it really depends. I kind of like Terra Fire better though, because it's good versus like Chi-Yu and stuff, but I might use Terra Steel because it resists more things and it takes neutral from a lot of things like Iron Bundle. Like the Terra on it should probably be something that takes neutral from whatever has Terra Ghost. So the main issue with Hariyama is that a lot of times they have Terra Ghost, like Terra Ghost Chi-Yu or Terra Ghost Bundle. So if they have Terra Ghost Bundle, then it would be better to have Terra Steel probably. But if they have Terra Ghost Chi-Yu, then it would be better to have like Terra Fire. Um, you would think there would be like 0 iron bundles with Terra Ghost because Terra Ice is in general better, but they just like to run Terra Ghost, and Chi-Yu for some reason likes to run like Terra Water or Terra Grass to beat Spore, Amoonguss, or whatever. So yeah, it seems like it's more likely actually for Iron Bundle to be the one with Terra Ghost than Chi-Yu lately, even though I don't know about that, if that makes any sense or not. But it makes some sense because the Terran Bundle is a lot more limited. Like, you're probably only going to use like 2 Terras, maybe 3, maybe Terra Grass, but you're probably just going to use Terra Ice or Terra Ghost. But with Chi-Yu, you could use a lot of different Terras. So, anyways, one really ingenious idea with Garganacl, by the way, is block, and I came up with it because I was like, I like Fissure, but it's not super consistent. It misses, and I over rely on it to kill stuff when I could have just salt cured them and won, but I just get greedy and Fissure when I'm in a bad position, and it just misses most of the time. So yeah, I was losing because of that when I like could have won. So I was looking for alternates, and even Terra Blast Flying, I saw someone use that and it did like 40 something percent to my Amoonguss, but I realized like someone could just intimidate your Garganacl though, because it's not clear body. So Terra Flying doesn't seem like a very smart option because Regenerator heals 1/3, so it's like you're not doing enough damage to the Moongus to eventually take it out or seriously threaten it. And Terra Flying's not super great defensively when they can use like Ice Spinner, Chien Pow or something. So I don't think I would want to use Terra Flying Garganacl even if they didn't use Intimidate. I like water and poison the most. I used to love water, but the game shifted so that there's like less Palafin and stuff, and people are relying more on their Flutter mains to counter Garganacl, so I might use poison, but figure I already have poison on Wo-Chien, so that could be my poison guy and help suck up the toxic spikes, even though it does have rest, so I could even use another Terra if I wanted to, but poison's not bad at all. It is good versus Flutter main, and you can just keep snarling it and pollen puffing your ally and resting the damage away, and you're good because snarl um, plus the tablets of ruins kind of keeps it alive, and pollen puff from a Moongus only does like 40 something, like 45% to Wo-Chien in the first place. So after a snarl, it does maybe barely more than 25%. So you can easily wall that with like citrus or leftovers and rest talk. So and keep snarling it or pollen puffing something. Even though I don't think you can sleep talk the pollen puff hit your ally, which would be nice sometimes. But anyways, I think this team has pretty good like offensive options and synergy. And by the way, I was kind of stupid and ran Earthquake with Tar and never used it because my team wasn't like immune to ground. So and I never wanted to lock in with a move like Earthquake that would hit my ally, so I like never used it. So I was experimenting with other stuff like low kick and brick break, and last term I used brick break, but like no one used screens, and I wish I would have had low kick versus the ting loos to help kill them a little bit easier. So like I could I meant this is actually supposed to be Terra Blast, Terra Grass Blast, maybe Tar, but actually maybe I shouldn't use Terra Grass Blast because I don't really need it if I have. Yeah, actually, this might be better anyways because Terra Grass is mostly just to wall like Spore and maybe a ground move and miscellaneous moves. And I don't necessarily want to get locked into it, even though it is good versus like Terra Water Mungus or whatever. But if they have Terra Water Mungus, normally I can do enough with like Rock Slide, hit both opponents and just do that instead of locking myself into Terra Grass Blast. So yeah, actually I think this is better because low kick will do the same damage to a lot of the Pokemon that I'm trying to use Terra Grass Blast for, like Tinglu, even though Terra Grass Blast would be nice for like the Terra Water Tinglus. So when they Terra evolve, that I can still super effect it. But this is pretty good. So I don't have to lock myself into Terra Blast or even have to use Terra Grass in a lot of cases to do damage. And then Stomping Tantrum, by the way, is a recent addition because I've been seeing a lot of Iron Hands lately, and ground just has good coverage in general with Tyranitar because let's go to this again. What resists rock? Well, Great Tusk, that wouldn't help really versus Great Tusk. I could use Terra Grass Blast, Tar, but on this team, I mean, if I use it outside of Trick Room, that's when it makes the most sense. That's why originally I was using Terra Grass Blast, because I wanted to one-shot stuff like Tusk. But I realized later, with a team like this, I could just use my ally to kill it, like Hatterene or something like that, or just ignore it and save it for later. Hit their allies and set up. You could even set up Iron Defense with Garganacl and wall it. I've Iron Defense like 3-4 times and I mean 2-3 times and walled it pretty well, even with Terra Poison. And Stomping Tantrum would be good versus King Ambit, even though there's also low kick, but that would be good as a backup. It would be really good versus mostly versus hands and a few other Pokemon that aren't used a ton that I'm not seeing here, but mostly versus the hands because they're gonna be used a lot more now with that tournament winning team, and it's just a good Pokemon in general. So and used a lot. So oops, what did I do? So this probably makes the most sense. And let me see. Tar keeps Garganacl alive on the special side, plus the Snarl and Fake Out support. And then on the physical side, though, it's even more supported because I have Iron Defense, Intimidate, and Tablets of Ruins. So it's really more the special attacks that would be the problem for a Garganacl team, and crits. Could even use Poison Garganacl, but I wanted to not have like all the Pokemon like weak to the same thing. So Garganacl with Terra Water wouldn't need to worry about Tusk as much, and I was kind of afraid that this team might be a little bit weak to Tusk. So because if you have to like Terra with Wo-Chien to survive a like fighting move, or Terra with Arcanine to wall a ground move a little bit better, or Terra with Tar to to wall a to wall whatever, close combat or ground move a little bit better, then you won't be able to tear with a second Pokemon. So I think this team's pretty good. I'm probably going to use something like this, but I got to work on tweaking it a little bit more for the tournament. There is a tournament on Monday that I'm hosting. It's going to be $10 of a prize to the winner, free entry. So make sure to register, and I'm trying to keep improving how well I judge in tournaments, and it's kind of difficult sometimes when there's a lot of chaos going on, like people leaking my team, like what stats I have, or just a lot of like judge requests, and I'm like the only judge and competing in the tournament sometimes. But overall, the tournaments have done pretty well, except lately there's just been a lot of BS that's happened, and unfortunately, it's kind of made me more irritable for other people that weren't trying to basically just troll to get banned or whatever. Um, so I don't know. That's something I gotta work on, but I don't really regret banning someone though if they're like if they just keep arguing with like a judge, and they don't even, and they try to, well, what I have probably the least tolerance for is for something that's made public that they didn't like try to resolve it in a private chat first, or if they did, I mean, even if they try to in a public chat first, if they're still not satisfied with it, for someone to post something like seriously negative about somebody in a public chat, that's like basically saying, I don't care if I get banned or not from this server, or I don't care if I have a relationship with you or not. I'm gonna try to like embarrass you in front of the whole world. So that to me is not okay, because like these tournament, if it was a tournament where you had to pay like something to enter, like $5, then I would be a lot more lenient on BS like that, or stuff like that. I guess it's not necessarily BS, but just stuff like that. But if you didn't pay to enter the tournament and it's free, which pretty much I think all these tournaments, yeah, every tournament I've hosted has been free, and most of them have offered prizes actually, $10 or more. So for people to like embarrass somebody over a free tournament, um, I mean, I guess it's a lot of it is principle and not just money, like, but still, it's just, but that's what I mean. It's principle. It's like, but it's a free tournament at the end of the day. So I don't know. I get people, but I'm trying to host these tournaments for fun, um, and I just like coming up with stuff. Um, did I? I think I fully went over this team like way more than I probably needed to, but it's just nice to have a priority move. Um, so some team options with this might be to, by the way, is to do what I normally do, is like lead Garg with some mon that supports it well, like either Hariyama or Arcanine or something, and then you can fake out or switch out to the from there, or you could lead like Garganacl Tar or whatever, if you think they're most likely gonna lead with like Flutter Mane or Chi-Yu or something to get that extra special defense boost, and then you can always switch out to something. So this team's pretty good for being able to switch in and out of like Wo-Chien, Arcanine, and stuff. And a friend was telling me, well, aren't you afraid of Garganacl being taunted? And I told him no, because I can just salt cure them. and most of the taunters are like, they're either not, taunt is not a very common move, but the Pokemon who do run taunt are usually like Talonflame or Gyarados, which are super affected uh, by Salt Cure either 4 times, or they're like part water type, so they take a lot of residual damage each turn from Salt Cure, like a fourth of their HP gone each turn. So they can taunt Garganacl, but they're gonna regret it because I'll get a free Salt Cure off and probably stall out the taunt long enough to recover later, or just switch out Garganacl if it's that bad, if they're putting that much pressure. But usually the type of teams that use taunt don't have a lot of offensive pressure, so you can just get a free Salt Cure that turn and just really lower their offense with like Will-O-Wisp and Tablets of Ruin and like Intimidate and Fake Out Stall and stuff, and or yeah, use Tar to help on the special defensive side, and keep keep Garganacl alive. It's like the keep Garganacl alive strategy I usually go with, but it is kind of weak to critical hits. So you got to make sure you kind of have high HP on Garganacl if you're worried about crits, especially when you're setting up Iron Defense and you got Intimidate stacked on that. Then a crit's gonna do way more than it normally would. So you got to be prepared for that, or just risk it. And the other alternate mode for this team is you could lead like Hatterene Hariyama with like Tar and something in the back, like Arcanine or Garganacl, and you have that heavy hyper offense, like hard trick room type of setup. Or you could just use like Hatterene and something in the back, like Hatterene Hariyama in the back, to set up a late game trick room and help sweep after you wear them down with like Garganacl and whatever, Arcanine or something. And there's just a lot of different options with this team. I want to keep trying it out more and and probably use it in a tournament, even if it's not the best team, because I really think block is a really good move with Garganacl, because you can block their Amoonguss. It cannot switch out with Regenerator. It eventually will die from Salt Cure. And you can Salt Cure their ally to kind of force the Amoonguss to keep pollen puffing instead of other things like Clear Smog or Spore your ally. And it just really puts the beats on them. And eventually that Amoonguss is going to die, and it has like no offense. So it's pretty much like you're going to beat him as long as Garg can beat their ally, and your ally can beat both Amoonguss and their ally. So let's say it's like Amoonguss Arcanine versus your Garganacl and the rest of your team. Well, if you block them in, you're kind of limiting their options because they can only switch out Amoonguss's ally. So, like, let's say it's like Amoonguss, Arcanine, Fluttermane left, then you could just keep switching in and out with like Wo-Chien, Terra Poison. If you get put asleep or Will-O-Wisp or Flare Blitzed, you could eventually just rest and sleep talk again. And the Pollen Puff Wo-Chien is really good for keeping this team alive, because there are some bulky Pokemon on it. Like you could Pollen Puff Garganacl instead of having to use Recover, or you could Recover and Pollen Puff, but you could like Pollen Puff and Iron Defense instead of having to use Recover, and set up, just really set up, and then Garganacl's almost impossible to kill, especially if you keep the special attackers like at bay and you have the sand. It just is going to be really hard to kill. So I think this team is going to do really well. I'll keep testing on the ladder. At first I was using Leech Seed Protect and it wasn't working that well with Terra Grass, even though it was beating, you could say, Amoonguss. And Wo-Chien does beat Dondozo, kind of, but not by itself. You have to have the right ally. And Garganacl, by the way, wasn't really beating like Dondozo because they could just tear grass and do enough damage. Um, but a lot of them now are actually oblivious, which are even easier to beat the oblivious ones. So you can just use Iron Defense on them and not have to worry about Unaware. And if they do use Unaware, you can use Arcanine with Intimidate. And the other cool thing with this team that I was telling a friend was if they use Terrafire Iron Hands, then you can't whisk them with Arcanine, but at least you can intimidate them. And you can use Wo-Chien, um, possibly Terra Poison with it. And the thing is yeah, Terra Fire would be pretty good with Iron Hands. Um, but they can't they can't beat everything. So Terra Fire Iron Hands would still be weak to Stomping Tantrum from Choice Band Tyranitar, and it would be weak to Salt Cure even though it's a low power move. So yeah, can still do something to it, and then forcing it to Terra is pretty good. But I might use Terra Poison Garganacl at some point to beat Iron Hands better and Fluttermane. It's just I wanted to test Terra Water again to see how good it was. I only wanted to use Terra Poison for the most part to beat like Iron Hands and Fluttermane, but mostly Fluttermane because I have Iron Defense versus Iron Hands, and that can kind of put it at bay. So I'm gonna stop the video here. I think I've talked long enough. Thanks for watching.